A biker lay dying in the hospital. 50 doctors couldn't figure out what was killing him. Then a single mom waitress serving his sister coffee remembered something that made her blood run cold. What she knew could save his life, if anyone would listen to someone who just pours coffee for a living. The screech of tires on asphalt still echoed in Jax Morrison's skull when the lights went out. He didn't remember the impact. Didn't remember the chrome guardrail peeling back like aluminum foil or the way his Harley had tumbled end over end down the embankment. What he did remember, in those last flickering moments before unconsciousness swallowed him whole, was the burning sensation spreading across his chest. Not pain from broken bones or torn muscle. Something else. Something chemical and wrong. Now, 16 hours later, he was dying in a hospital bed, and nobody could tell him why. Dr. Marcus Webb stood at the foot of Jax's bed in the intensive care unit of St. Harbor Medical Center, his jaw tight with frustration. Around him, a constellation of monitors beeped their urgent warnings. Oxygen saturation dropping. Blood pressure erratic. Kidney function declining faster than any motorcycle crash should cause. Run the abdominal CT again, Webb ordered, not for the first time. The trauma nurse, a compact woman named Chen, didn't hide her skepticism. Dr. Webb, we've done 3 CTs, 2 ultrasounds, and an exploratory laparotomy. There's no internal bleeding. No ruptured organs. His injuries from the crash were relatively minor: broken collarbone, road rash, mild concussion. Then explain to me why this man is in multi-organ failure. Webb's voice cracked with exhaustion. He'd been on shift for 20 hours straight, and Jax Morrison was his third mystery of the night. Except the other 2 had at least made sense. This one defied every rule of trauma medicine he'd learned in 15 years of emergency care. In the bed, Jax's eyes rolled beneath purple-veined lids. His lips had taken on a grayish tint that made Webb think of spoiled meat. The biker's arms, covered in faded tattoos of eagles and flames, twitched with involuntary spasms. Toxicology came back clean, Chen continued, pulling up results on her tablet. No alcohol, no drugs, no common poisons. Liver enzymes are through the roof, but there's no explanation. It's like his body is just shutting down. Webb scrubbed his hand across his face. 23 specialists had looked at this case in the past day. Neurologists, nephrologists, hepatologists, toxicologists. They'd thrown every test in the book at Jax Morrison. Blood cultures. Spinal taps. Genetic panels. Nothing explained the cascade of organ failure consuming him from the inside out. Get Dr. Patel from nephrology back down here, Webb said. And page infectious disease again. Maybe we're looking at some rare parasite or... Dr. Webb, Chen's voice dropped. His sister is outside. She's been here all night. She wants to know if she should. If she should call more family. The unspoken question hung in the air like smoke. Should she say goodbye? Webb glanced at the monitors again. 48 hours. That's what the computer models predicted. Maybe less. Without identifying the cause, they were just managing symptoms, watching a man die in slow motion. Tell her I'll be out in 5 minutes. Chen nodded and slipped from the room, leaving Webb alone with his dying patient. He moved closer to the bed, studying Jax's face. Mid-30s, probably. Strong features beneath the pallor of approaching death. A small scar through his left eyebrow. The kind of face that smiled easily, though it wasn't smiling now. What the hell happened to you? Webb whispered. Jax's lips moved. A whisper so faint Webb almost missed it. Jacket. Webb leaned in. Jax? Can you hear me? What about your jacket? But the biker had slipped back under, his breathing shallow and labored. Webb pulled back, frowning. Jacket? They'd cut away all of Jax's riding gear in the ER. Standard protocol. It had been logged and sent to medical evidence storage along with his personal effects. Nothing unusual about any of it as far as he knew. He made a mental note to check the inventory report, though he doubted it would matter. A jacket couldn't cause this kind of systemic collapse. Could it? In the hallway outside the ICU, Webb found Jax's sister slumped in a plastic chair, her face buried in her hands. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, and Webb saw the desperate hope flicker and die in her eyes when she read his expression. No change? Her voice was hoarse from crying. I'm sorry, Ms. Morrison. We're doing everything we can, but you don't know what's wrong with him. It wasn't a question. 50 doctors, and not one of you can figure it out. Webb winced at the accuracy of the count. Word had spread through the hospital. The mysterious biker case. Physicians from other departments had been stopping by, offering theories, each one more implausible than the last. 50 might actually be conservative. I know this is incredibly difficult, Webb began, falling into the familiar rhythms of bedside manner. But I want you to understand that we haven't given up. We're still running tests, still consulting with specialists. He's going to die, isn't he? Her eyes, the same shade of blue-gray as her brother's, locked onto Webb's. Just tell me the truth. Please. Webb wanted to offer platitudes, to cushion the blow with medical jargon and careful phrasing. But something in her expression demanded honesty. Without identifying the cause. Yes. I believe he has less than 48 hours. The words hung between them like a death sentence. Because that's exactly what they were. Jax's sister, her name was Rachel, Webb remembered from the intake forms, stood up slowly. She swayed slightly, and Webb reached out to steady her, but she waved him off. I need air, she said. I can't be here right now. Ms. Morrison, you shouldn't be alone. I'll be fine. I just need to clear my head. Get some food. Something. She was already walking away, her movements mechanical. Call me if anything changes. Anything at all. Webb watched her disappear around the corner toward the elevators. He should have stopped her, should have insisted she stay close. But what could he say? What comfort could he offer when he couldn't even save her brother? Back in the ICU, the monitors continued their relentless countdown. Jax Morrison was dying, and 50 of the best doctors in St. Harbor couldn't figure out why. But sometimes, Webb would later reflect, the answer doesn't come from doctors at all. Sometimes it comes from a single mother working the night shift at a roadside diner, serving coffee and remembering things that no one else thought to look for. Sometimes the miracle wears an apron and sensible shoes. Sometimes it takes a waitress to see what 50 doctors missed. The fluorescent lights of Sal's diner hummed like dying wasps, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made the red vinyl booths look orange. It was 2:47 a.m., and Mara Chen was on hour 9 of her double shift. She moved between tables with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been doing this too long, coffee pot in one hand, order pad in the other. Her feet ached in her non-slip shoes, and there was a grease stain on her uniform she'd stopped caring about around midnight. But she smiled anyway, genuine, warm, because tips paid for her son's asthma medication, and kindness cost nothing. The diner was nearly empty. A trucker nursed coffee in the corner booth. 2 college kids shared cheese fries, their textbooks spread across the table. And then the woman walked in. Mara knew grief when she saw it. This woman wore it like a coat 2 sizes too big, her shoulders hunched beneath its weight. She slid into a booth by the window, staring at nothing, her hands trembling as she gripped the laminated menu. Hey there, honey, Mara approached with her coffee pot. Rough night? The woman looked up, and Mara saw red-rimmed eyes and a face drawn tight with exhaustion. You could say that. Coffee? Please. And I don't know. Whatever's hot and fast. I need to get back to the hospital soon. Mara poured the coffee, her mind already cataloging possibilities. Hospital visitor at 3 a.m. meant ICU. Meant someone dying or close to it. I'll put in a rush order on some soup and a grilled cheese. That work? Perfect. Thank you. Mara should have walked away then. Should have given the woman space to process whatever hell she was living through. But something in her expression, that particular blend of desperation and helplessness, made Mara linger. Family? She asked gently. The woman wrapped both hands around her coffee mug like it was the only solid thing in the world. My brother. He was in a motorcycle accident yesterday. They can't figure out what's wrong with him. He's dying, and 50 doctors can't tell me why. The number struck Mara as odd. 50 seemed too specific to be an exaggeration. 50? Give or take, the woman's laugh was bitter. They keep calling in specialists. Running tests. But his organs are just failing, one after another, and nobody knows why. The crash wasn't even that bad. Broken collarbone, some road rash. But it's like something's poisoning him from the inside out. Mara felt a cold finger trace down her spine. Poisoning. Organ failure. Motorcycle crash. What are his symptoms exactly? The words were out before she could stop them. The woman looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Why? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked. It's none of my. No, it's. I don't care anymore. Maybe a waitress will figure it out since the doctors can't, the woman's voice cracked. His kidneys are failing. His liver. They said something about his blood not clotting right. His skin is turning this grayish color. He keeps having these spasms, like little seizures. And he's burning up, but they can't find any infection. Each symptom landed in Mara's memory like a key turning in a lock. She'd heard this before. Years ago. Back when she'd worked at Tommy's custom garage in Bakersfield, before her ex-husband left, before she'd ended up here slinging hash to make ends meet. There'd been a writer. Young guy, maybe 23. He'd come in complaining about a weird rash, said he felt like he was on fire. Tommy had taken one look at him and asked. Was your brother wearing any special gear? Mara's voice was suddenly urgent. Any new equipment he'd bought recently? The woman blinked. I don't know. Why? Was he wearing one of those gel-cooled jackets? The ones with the cold packs built into the lining? The woman's face went pale. Yes. He bought it at a rally a few weeks ago. He was so proud of it, said it was high-tech, kept him cool on long rides. How did you? Mara's hand shook as she set down the coffee pot. What color were the gel packs? I don't. Blue, I think. Maybe blue-green. The woman was leaning forward now. Why? What does his jacket have to do with anything? The memory crystallized. Tommy standing over that young rider, saying in his gruff way, these cheap knockoff cooling jackets are killing people. The gel isn't medical grade. It's industrial coolant. If the packs rupture, it absorbs right through the skin. By the time symptoms show up, you're already dying. The kid had lived. Barely. Because Tommy had recognized it immediately and rushed him to a hospital that knew what to look for. Where's the jacket now? Mara asked. They cut it off him in the ER. Sent it to some evidence facility, I think. Standard procedure for accident victims, the woman grabbed Mara's wrist. Why? What do you know? Mara's mind raced. She needed to be sure. Needed to not give false hope. But if she was right, if this was what she thought it was, every minute mattered. I need you to listen to me very carefully, Mara said. There was a recall. Years ago. On certain aftermarket cooling jackets. The gel inside, if it's counterfeit, if it's not medical grade, it's toxic. Extremely toxic. And if the packs ruptured in the crash. The woman stood so fast her coffee sloshed onto the table. Oh my God. The symptoms match. All of them. Mara was already untying her apron. But the doctors need to test for it specifically. It won't show up on standard toxicology. We have to tell them. We have to. They're not going to listen to me. I'm a waitress. Mara met her eyes. But they might listen to you. Rachel Morrison was back at St. Harbor Medical Center within 20 minutes, her untouched grilled cheese abandoned on the diner table. Mara had insisted on coming with her, clocking out early and texting her neighbor to check on her sleeping son. Some things couldn't wait. Now they stood in the hospital's 24-hour cafe on the second floor, Rachel gathering courage while Mara clutched a manila folder she'd retrieved from her car, old maintenance logs from Tommy's garage, yellowed and coffee-stained but still legible. Dr. Webb will think I've lost my mind, Rachel said, staring at the elevator that would take them to the ICU. Maybe. Mara's voice was steady. But your brother doesn't have time for you to worry about looking crazy. Rachel nodded, pressing the elevator button with a trembling finger. But before the doors could open, voices drifted from a nearby table, two EMTs still in uniform, their radios crackling softly. Highway 9 accident yesterday morning, the younger one was saying. Biker hit the guardrail doing 70. We rolled up expecting a mess, but the guy was conscious, talking. Vitals were stable. Mara's head snapped toward them. That had to be Jack's. Yeah, I heard he's dying now though, the older EMT replied, dumping sugar into his coffee. Weird case. My buddy in the ER said they can't figure it out. Road rash was pretty bad on his torso. We had to peel his jacket off him, thing was soaked through. Thought it was blood at first, but it was this weird blue gel. Cooling jacket or something. Real high-end looking. Mara moved toward their table before she could think better of it. Excuse me. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that biker, was the gel pack ruptured? Both EMTs looked up, surprised. The younger one's eyes narrowed. Who's asking? I'm his sister, Rachel said quickly, stepping beside Mara. Please. Was the gel pack broken? The older EMT's expression softened. Yeah, actually. Multiple packs. They'd burst on impact. The gel was everywhere, soaked into his shirt, all over his skin. We cleaned him up best we could in the rig, but, he shrugged. Why? Did you keep the jacket? Mara asked urgently. Did anyone test the gel? Standard protocol, all personal effects go to medical evidence storage. But test it for what? It's just cooling gel. It's not just cooling gel if it's counterfeit. Mara opened her folder, pulling out a faded photocopy. Look. This is from a safety bulletin that came out 7 years ago. There was a recall on certain aftermarket cooling jackets, brands manufactured overseas with no safety certification. The gel inside isn't medical-grade silica. It's industrial glycol-based coolant. Diethylene glycol mixed with propylene compounds. The younger EMT leaned forward, scanning the document. Jesus. That's the same stuff that was in that tainted antifreeze scandal. Exactly. Mara's finger traced down the page. Symptoms of dermal absorption include acute kidney injury, metabolic acidosis, liver failure, neurological symptoms including seizures. Death typically occurs within 48 to 72 hours without specific treatment. The older EMT had gone pale. That matches everything I've heard about the Morrison case. We need to tell his doctors, Rachel said. Right now. They found Dr. Webb in the ICU, reviewing labs at the nurse's station. He looked up when Rachel approached, his expression shifting to professional sympathy. Ms. Morrison, I was just about to call you. Your brother's condition has. His jacket, Rachel interrupted. You need to test his cooling jacket for toxic gel. Diethylene glycol. It's poisoning him. Webb blinked. I'm sorry, what? Mara stepped forward, offering the folder. Dr. Webb, I know this sounds strange, but please look at this. There was a recall on counterfeit cooling jackets 7 years ago. If Jax was wearing one and the gel packs ruptured in the crash. Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but we've already run comprehensive toxicology. There's no evidence of poisoning. Standard tox screens won't detect it, Mara pressed. You need to specifically test for glycol compounds. The symptoms match perfectly: acute organ failure, neurological involvement, the gray discoloration of the skin. I've been practicing emergency medicine for 15 years, Webb's voice had taken on an edge. I think I know the difference between trauma and chemical poisoning. Then explain why he's dying. Rachel's voice cracked through the ICU's hushed atmosphere. You said yourself you don't know what's wrong. She's giving you an answer. Why won't you even consider it? Webb glanced around at the nurses watching the confrontation. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, controlled. Ms. Morrison, I understand you're desperate. But acting on theories from, he glanced at Mara's uniform, visible beneath her jacket, untrained sources could waste valuable time and resources. Untrained? Mara's jaw tightened. I worked in motorcycle maintenance for 8 years. I've seen this before. A rider came into our shop with these exact symptoms. My boss saved his life because he recognized what it was. This is a hospital, not a garage. Webb's tone was final. If there was any merit to this theory, one of the 50 specialists we've consulted would have suggested it. He turned back to his charts, dismissing them. Rachel looked at Mara, devastation written across her face. What do we do now? Mara's mind was racing. The jacket. They needed the jacket itself, needed to prove what the gel really was. You said it was sent to medical evidence storage? That's what they told me. Where? I don't know. Some facility off-site, I think. Mara's eyes hardened with determination. Then we need to find it. Because if we can test that gel ourselves, prove what it really is, they'll have to listen. How are we supposed to? Leave that to me. Mara was already pulling out her phone. First, I need to make a call to Bakersfield. Then we're going to get that jacket. By 6 a.m., Mara had confirmation from Tommy in Bakersfield. He'd sent her photos of the old case file, the writer he'd helped, the test results, the chemical composition reports. Everything she needed to prove her theory. But she still needed the actual jacket. Rachel led her to the hospital's administrative office on the ground floor. Behind a sliding glass window, a clerk with reading glasses perched on her nose looked up from her computer with barely concealed irritation. We need to locate a patient's personal effects, Rachel said. My brother, Jax Morrison. He was admitted yesterday after a motorcycle accident. The clerk typed slowly, each keystroke deliberate. Morrison. Jax. Yes. Personal effects were logged and transferred at 11:47 a.m. yesterday. Transferred where? Mara asked. Medical Evidence Storage Facility. It's our off-site location on Harborview Drive. But you can't just go there. You need authorization forms, chain of custody documentation. How long does that take? Rachel's voice was tight. 72 hours for processing, usually. Plus you'd need the attending physician's signature. My brother doesn't have 72 hours. Rachel slammed her hand on the counter. He could be dead by then. The clerk's expression didn't change. I understand this is difficult, but protocols exist for a reason. If you'd like to fill out the request forms. Wait, Mara leaned closer to the window. You said the effects were transferred at 11:47 yesterday morning. The accident happened around 9 a.m. That's less than 3 hours later. So? The clerk shrugged. So that's incredibly fast. Mara looked at Rachel. How long was Jax in the ER before they moved him to ICU? I don't know. 4 hours? Maybe 5? Exactly. Mara turned back to the clerk. Personal effects don't usually get transferred until after a patient is stabilized and moved. Sometimes not for days. Why was his gear sent out so quickly? The clerk's fingers paused over her keyboard. I just process the transfers. I don't ask questions. Who authorized it? Mara pressed. Let me check. More typing. A frown creased the clerk's forehead. That's odd. The authorization came from hospital administration directly. From Mr. Garrett's office. Who's Mr. Garrett? Mara asked. Rachel's face had gone pale. He's the hospital administrator. The guy who handles legal issues, lawsuits, risk management. She turned to Mara. Why would he be personally involved in logging my brother's jacket? The question hung in the air like a noose. Mara's stomach twisted. She thought about the recall, about the lawsuits that had followed when people died. About hospitals that had treated victims and faced liability questions. About how much it would cost St. Harbor Medical Center if it came out that they'd missed a poisoning case, let a patient die from something preventable. Where is this Harborview facility? Mara asked quietly. The clerk rattled off an address, but Mara barely heard it. Her mind was already racing ahead, connecting dots she didn't want to connect. Rachel grabbed her arm as they left the administrative office. You think someone's hiding the jacket on purpose? I think someone moved it very quickly, and I think we need to see it before it disappears completely. Mara pulled out her phone. I'm calling Tommy again. He knows people who work in evidence storage. Maybe someone owes him a favor. But before she could dial, her phone buzzed. A text from her neighbor, your son's awake and asking for you. Didn't want to worry you but he's wheezing a bit. Should I use the emergency inhaler? Mara's heart clenched. Asthma attacks were unpredictable. Sometimes they passed. Sometimes they didn't. And she was miles from home, chasing a theory that might be wrong, helping a stranger whose brother might die anyway. Rachel saw her expression. Go. Your son needs you. But the jacket. I'll figure it out. You've already done more than anyone else. Rachel's voice was thick. Please. Go take care of your boy. Mara looked at her phone, then at Rachel, torn between two desperate situations. Finally, she shook her head. My neighbor's a retired nurse. She knows what to do. And if your brother doesn't get that antidote soon, it won't matter anyway. She typed a quick response, use the inhaler. Call me if it gets worse. I'll be home in a few hours. You don't have to do this, Rachel whispered. Yeah, I do. Mara met her eyes. 8 years ago, Tommy saved a kid's life because he paid attention. Because he gave a damn. Now it's my turn. They walked out to the parking lot together, the early morning sun just starting to burn through the fog. Mara's car was a 15-year-old Honda with a cracked windshield and a "baby on board" sticker fading on the back window. Harborview Drive is on the industrial side of town, Mara said, starting the engine. 20-minute drive. Rachel climbed in beside her. What do we do when we get there? They're not just going to hand us the jacket. Mara thought about her son wheezing at home. About Jax dying in his hospital bed. About administrators who moved evidence quickly and doctors who dismissed waitresses who knew too much. We'll figure it out, she said, pulling out of the parking lot. One way or another, we're getting that jacket. What she didn't say, what she was trying not to think about, was that someone might already have made sure the jacket couldn't tell its story anymore. Some evidence doesn't just disappear by accident. Sometimes it's helped along. The medical evidence storage facility was exactly as depressing as Mara had imagined, a converted warehouse with razor wire fencing and security cameras that probably hadn't worked in years. They pulled into the empty parking lot just after 7 a.m. "It doesn't open until 9, Rachel said, checking the sign on the door. Mara stared at the building, frustration burning in her chest. Every minute they waited was a minute Jax didn't have. She pulled out her phone and called Tommy again. "Did you reach anyone?" she asked when he picked up. "Yeah, but you're not gonna like it. My contact says the Morrison evidence was flagged as pending administrative review. That means no one can access it without direct authorization from hospital management." "What does that even mean?" "It means someone wants that jacket locked down tight." Tommy's voice was grim. "Mara, be careful. If they're playing games with evidence, they're protecting something." She hung up and looked at Rachel. "We can't get in." "Not legally." "Then we wait for my brother to die." Rachel's voice was hollow. Mara sat in silence, the engine ticking as it cooled. She thought about her son at home, about bills piled on her kitchen counter, about how she couldn't afford to get arrested for breaking into a government facility. But she also thought about that young writer in Tommy's garage 8 years ago, his skin turning gray, and how close he'd come to dying because no one had recognized what was killing him. "I need to go home," she said finally. But not to give up. 20 minutes later, they pulled into the driveway of Mara's small rental house. Inside, her neighbor Mrs. Patterson sat on the couch with 7-year-old Danny, who was breathing easier now but still pale. "Mama." Danny scrambled toward her, and Mara caught him in a fierce hug. "Hey, baby. How are you feeling?" "Better. Mrs. Patterson gave me the inhaler and we watched cartoons." He pulled back, studying her face with the uncanny perception of children. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired." She kissed his forehead. "Why don't you go play in your room for a bit? Mama needs to find something." Once Danny was occupied with his Legos, Mara went to the hall closet and started digging through boxes. Rachel stood in the doorway, watching. "What are you looking for?" "This." Mara pulled out a battered 3-ring binder, its cover marked with grease stains and coffee rings. "Tommy gave this to me when I left Bakersfield. Said I might need it someday. It's his technical manual, everything he'd learned about motorcycle gear, cooling systems, the recall, all of it." She flipped through the pages, stopping at a section labeled Cooling Jacket Specifications and Hazards. There were diagrams, chemical formulas, photographs of gel packs, both legitimate and counterfeit. And there, near the back, was a detailed breakdown of symptoms. Rachel leaned over her shoulder, reading. Rapid organ collapse. Blood toxicity misread as internal bleeding. Failure of detox organs within 48 hours. Her voice broke. "That's Jax. That's exactly what's happening to him. Look at this." Mara pointed to a highlighted section. "The counterfeit gel contains diethylene glycol, ethylene glycol, and a propylene-based carrier compound. It's metabolized by the liver into toxic acids, glycolic acid and oxalic acid. They crystallize in the kidneys, cause metabolic acidosis, and destroy organ tissue from the inside out. Can you prove this? I mean, really prove it? With documentation a doctor would believe?" Mara ran to her ancient printer and started making copies, the chemical breakdowns, the symptom lists, the case study of the writer Tommy had saved. Her hands shook as she collated the pages. "This should be enough," she said, stuffing the copies into a folder. "We go back to the hospital. We demand they run a specific toxicology panel for glycol compounds. We show them this evidence and we don't leave until they listen." Rachel checked her phone. "I just got a text from the hospital. Jax's condition has deteriorated again. They're saying I should come back." "That I should." She couldn't finish the sentence. They were out the door in seconds, Mrs. Patterson promising to watch Danny. Mara drove faster than she should have, the folder clutched in Rachel's lap like a talisman. At St. Harbor Medical Center, they headed straight for the ICU. But Dr. Webb wasn't there. Instead, they found a young resident, Dr. Priya Nandan, according to her badge, reviewing Jax's charts with a furrowed brow. "Are you family?" Priya asked Rachel. "I'm his sister." "Is he stable for now?" "But barely. I've been trying to understand this case all morning. It doesn't make sense." She looked exhausted, like she'd been wrestling with an impossible puzzle. "Every specialist we've brought in has a different theory, but none of them fit all the symptoms." Mara stepped forward, offering the folder. "Dr. Nandan, please. Just look at this. 5 minutes of your time." Priya glanced at the folder, then at Mara's diner uniform visible beneath her jacket. "Are you a medical professional?" "No. But I know what's killing him, and it's in these pages." Something in Mara's voice, the absolute certainty, the desperation, made Priya pause. She took the folder and started reading. Her eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. "Diethylene glycol poisoning from a contaminated cooling jacket," she whispered. "That would explain everything. The kidney crystals we saw on the microscopy. The unexplained acidosis. The neurological symptoms." She looked up. "Why didn't anyone think of this?" "Because they weren't listening to a waitress," Mara said quietly. Priya's jaw tightened. "Wait here." She disappeared into a nearby office, the folder clutched in her hands. Through the window, they could see her making phone calls, typing frantically on her computer. Rachel grabbed Mara's hand. "Do you think she believes us?" "I think," Mara said, "we just found the one doctor willing to look past the lab coat and see the truth." Dr. Priya Nandan emerged from the office 20 minutes later, her expression tight with a mixture of anger and vindication. "I ordered a specific glycol compound panel," she said. "Rush processing. We should have results within 2 hours." She looked at Mara. "If you're right, and everything in that manual suggests you are, we've wasted almost 30 hours treating the wrong thing. What happens now?" Rachel asked. "Now I have to tell Dr. Webb and hospital administration that a waitress diagnosed what 50 physicians missed." Priya's laugh was bitter. "That should go over well." As if summoned by his name, Dr. Webb appeared at the nurse's station, a coffee in hand and irritation etched on his face. Behind him strode a tall man in an expensive suit, late 50s, silver hair, the kind of commanding presence that screamed authority. Hospital Administrator Garrett, Mara realized. "Dr. Nandan," Webb's voice was sharp. "I just received a notification that you ordered an unauthorized toxicology panel for the Morrison case. Care to explain?" Priya straightened her shoulders. "I have reason to believe the patient is suffering from diethylene glycol poisoning from a contaminated cooling jacket. The evidence is compelling, Anne." "Evidence from whom?" Garrett interrupted, his eyes sliding to Mara and Rachel. "Let me guess. Our concerned civilians have been playing detective again." "Sir, if you would just look at the documentation." "I've seen enough documentation to last a lifetime." Garrett's tone was ice. "Dr. Webb, a word. Now." They moved to a private office visible through glass walls. Mara, Rachel, and Priya watched as the conversation escalated. Webb's hands moved in frustrated gestures. Garrett's face reddened. And through it all, Priya stood rigid, her jaw clenched. "They're shutting it down," Priya whispered. "Garrett's afraid. If it comes out that a recalled product caused this, and we didn't catch it, the lawsuits will bury this hospital." "But Jax is dying." Rachel's voice cracked. "I know." Priya's hands balled into fists. "And Garrett knows too. But he's thinking about liability, about insurance premiums, about the hospital's reputation. One man's life versus the institution, that's the calculation he's making." The office door opened. Garrett emerged first, his expression carved from stone. Dr. Nandan, you are to cancel that toxicology panel immediately. Furthermore, you are to cease all contact with non-medical personnel regarding the Morrison case. Is that clear? Sir, with respect, if we don't test for. That's an order, Doctor. Garrett's voice could have frozen nitrogen. Dr. Webb is the attending physician, and he has determined that your theory lacks sufficient medical foundation. We will not waste hospital resources chasing speculation. Priya's face flushed. This isn't speculation. The evidence is right here. Evidence compiled by a waitress who took a correspondence course in motorcycle maintenance. Garrett's smile was condescending. I'm sure she means well, but this is a hospital, not a garage. We rely on trained medical professionals, not amateur theories from the service industry. Mara felt the words like a slap. Service industry. As if her years of experience, her knowledge, her desperation to save a dying man meant nothing because she wore an apron instead of a white coat. You're sentencing him to death, she said quietly. Garrett turned to her, his expression a careful mask of professional sympathy. Ms. Chen. Mara Chen. Ms. Chen, I understand you believe you're helping. But interfering with hospital operations is serious business. If you continue to disrupt our medical staff, I'll have no choice but to call security. He glanced at Rachel. I suggest you both go home and let the professionals do their jobs. He walked away, Dr. Webb trailing behind him like a reluctant shadow. Rachel sank into a nearby chair, her face buried in her hands. It's over. They're going to let him die to cover their asses. But Priya was staring at her phone, her eyes bright with determination. The hell they will. What? Mara moved closer. I already submitted the blood samples before Garrett showed up. The test is running. Priya's smile was fierce. He can order me to cancel it, but I can't unsend samples that are already in the lab. Technical difficulties, you know. Won't you get in trouble? Rachel asked. Probably. But I didn't become a doctor to watch people die because administrators are afraid of lawsuits. Priya pulled up something on her phone. There's something else. I did some research on your cooling jacket theory. There's an antidote, well, not exactly an antidote, but a neutralizing agent. Fomepizole combined with sodium bicarbonate infusion. It blocks the metabolism of the glycols, prevents the formation of toxic metabolites. So if we can prove what's in his system, Mara started. Then we can treat it. Yes, Priya's expression darkened. Except there's a problem. Fomepizole isn't common. Most hospitals don't stock it because glycol poisoning is rare. I checked our pharmacy records. We had one vial shipped here 8 months ago for a different patient, but, she trailed off, her frown deepening. But what? Rachel pressed. But according to the inventory system, it's gone. Missing. The computer shows it was checked out 3 months ago for a patient who never existed. The medical record number doesn't match anyone in our system. The three women stared at each other, the implications settling over them like a shroud. Someone deleted it from inventory, Mara said slowly. Someone made it disappear. But why would? Rachel stopped, understanding dawning in her eyes. Garrett. He's been planning this. Making sure if this exact situation ever came up, there'd be no way to treat it. Priya's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her face went pale. What is it? Mara asked. Jax just crashed. His heart stopped. They're coding him right now. Rachel ran for the ICU, Priya close behind her. Mara followed, her heart hammering as alarms shrieked down the corridor. Through the window, she could see the crash team surrounding Jax's bed, a chaos of bodies, hands performing compressions, someone calling for the defibrillator. Clear. Jax's body arched off the bed. The monitor showed a brief flutter, then flatlined again. Resume compressions. Push another round of AP. Rachel's fist pressed against the glass, her breath fogging it in short gasps. Come on, Jax. Come on. Mara stood behind her, feeling helpless. All the knowledge in the world didn't matter if they couldn't use it. The antidote existed somewhere in this building, or it had, but finding it might as well be impossible. We got him, someone shouted inside the ICU. The monitor showed a rhythm. Weak, irregular, but there. Jax's chest rose and fell with the ventilator's assistance. The team stepped back, sweating, exhausted. Dr. Webb emerged moments later, pulling off his gloves. He looked at Rachel and for a moment, his professional mask slipped. She saw genuine fear in his eyes. He's stable. For now. But Ms. Morrison, that's the second time his heart has stopped. The next time, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Priya's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and grabbed Mara's arm. The tox results are back. We need to see them. Now. They found an empty consultation room. Priya pulled up the lab results on her tablet, her hands shaking slightly as she scrolled through the data. Serum diethylene glycol, 847 mg per liter, she read aloud. Ethylene glycol, 623 mg per liter. Metabolites consistent with glycol poisoning including glycolic acid and oxalate crystals. She looked up, her face a mixture of triumph and horror. You were right. It's exactly what you said it was. So we can treat him now, Rachel said. Right? You said there was an antidote. Priya's expression fell. Fomepizole. But I told you, it's missing from our inventory. Then we get it from another hospital, Mara insisted. Call around. Someone has to have it. I already tried. The closest supply is at County General, 40 minutes away. By the time we get it here, Priya trailed off. Mara thought about the missing vial, about Garrett's quick disposal of the jacket, about how efficiently evidence could vanish when powerful people wanted it gone. But medications didn't just disappear. They had to go somewhere. What if it's not really missing, she said slowly. What if someone just hid it? Made it look missing in the system? Priya's eyes widened. The pharmacy logs show it was checked out for a non-existent patient. That means someone with access to the system deliberately created a false record. Where would they hide it? Rachel asked. Somewhere they could retrieve it if they needed to. Somewhere off the books, Priya bit her lip, thinking. The basement. There are old storage units down there, equipment that's been decommissioned, expired medications we haven't disposed of yet. It's a mess. Nobody goes down there except maintenance. Would Garrett have access? Mara asked. Administrators have access to everything, Priya stood. But if I go down there and get caught, I'm done. Garrett already wants my head for running that tox panel. Then I'll go. Mara was already moving toward the door. I'm just a waitress, remember? Nobody important. Nobody who matters. Mara, Rachel started. Your brother has maybe 6 hours left. Probably less. Mara met her eyes. I'm not letting him die because some bureaucrat is worried about lawsuits. Priya hesitated, then made a decision. The basement is accessible through the service elevator near the cafeteria. Level B2. The storage units are in the east wing. Look for pharmaceutical supply boxes, they're labeled with orange hazard tape. How will I know which one has the fomepizole? It'll be in a small glass vial, clear liquid. The box should be labeled Antizol, that's the brand name. Priya grabbed a piece of paper and scribbled something. Here's what it looks like. And Mara? If you find it, text me immediately. Don't try to bring it up yourself, security might stop you. I'll come down and we'll figure out how to get it to Jax. Mara took the paper and Rachel's hand. If something happens to me, make sure my son knows I was trying to help someone." "Nothing's going to happen to you," Rachel said fiercely. "You're going to find that medication, and we're going to save my brother, and then I'm buying you the biggest breakfast that diner has ever served." Mara managed a weak smile. "I'm holding you to that." The service elevator was exactly where Priya said it would be, tucked behind a door marked, "Staff Only." Mara slipped inside and pressed B2, her heart racing as the elevator descended with a mechanical groan. The basement was cold, lit by flickering fluorescent tubes that cast everything in a sickly green pallor. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping condensation onto concrete floors. The air smelled of mildew and disinfectant. The East Wing storage area was a labyrinth of metal shelving units crammed with boxes, old gurneys, and equipment Mara couldn't begin to identify. She started searching, reading labels in the dim light. Surgical supplies. Linens. Dietary supplements. Outdated 4 pumps. And then, there. A box with orange hazard tape, pushed far back on a bottom shelf behind a stack of bedpans. Mara pulled it out, her hands shaking as she opened it. Inside were 6 small glass vials, each labeled Antizol, Fomepizole, Injection, 1g/ml. She'd found it. Mara pulled out her phone to text Priya, and froze. Footsteps echoed through the basement. Coming closer. A voice called out, cold and familiar, "I know you're down here, Ms. Chen. And I know what you're looking for." Administrator Garrett stepped into view, blocking her only exit. Mara's mind raced. She was trapped in a basement with a man who'd deliberately hidden life-saving medication, and the only exit was blocked. She slipped her phone into her pocket, the vials still clutched in her other hand. "That medication doesn't belong to you," Garrett said, stepping closer. His voice was calm, reasonable, the tone of someone used to being obeyed. "Put it back. A man is dying upstairs. A man is dying because of a defective product, not because of this hospital's care." Garrett's eyes were hard. "If word gets out that we had the antidote and didn't use it initially, do you know what that means? Negligence lawsuits. Wrongful death claims. The media will crucify us. This hospital serves 15,000 patients a year, Ms. Chen. I won't let one case destroy everything we've built. So you'll just let him die? Cover it up? I'm protecting this institution." Garrett moved closer. "Give me the vials. Walk away. Go back to your diner and your son and forget any of this happened. I'll make sure you're compensated for your concern." Mara's thumb found the record button on her phone in her pocket. "You're admitting you hid the antidote. That you knew what could save him and you deliberately made it disappear." "I'm admitting nothing," but Garrett's expression flickered, just for a moment. "The medication was removed from inventory due to pending expiration. Standard protocol. The expiration date is 18 months away. I can see it on the vials." They stared at each other across the dim basement, the only sound the drip of water from overhead pipes. "You can't win this," Garrett said quietly. "Who do you think they'll believe? A hospital administrator with 20 years of service, or a single mother waitress with a history of financial instability?" The words stung because they were designed to. Because men like Garrett knew exactly where to cut. But Mara thought about her son wheezing at home, about the inhaler she could barely afford, about every time someone had looked through her like she didn't exist because she served coffee instead of ordering it. She thought about Jack's dying upstairs while this man played political games with his life. "I think," she said clearly, "that the truth matters more than your reputation." She bolted. Not toward the exit, that's what he expected. Instead, she ran deeper into the storage area, weaving between shelves, heading for the emergency stairs she'd glimpsed at the far end. Behind her, Garrett shouted, his footsteps heavy on the concrete. Mara hit the stairwell door, shouldering it open. She took the stairs 2 at a time, her waitress shoes slipping on the metal treads. 1 floor up. 2. She burst through the door into the main hospital corridor, and ran straight into Rachel and Priya. "We saw Garrett follow you on the security cameras," Priya gasped. "Did you?" Mara held up the vials. "Got them. And I got something else." She pulled out her phone, stopping the recording. Garrett's voice played back tinny but clear, "I'm protecting this institution. Give me the vials. Walk away. Forget any of this happened." Rachel's eyes went wide. "You recorded him?" "Every word." Mara looked at Priya. "Including the part where he admitted removing the medication from inventory and trying to bribe me to keep quiet." Priya grabbed the vials, checking the labels. "These are perfect. Unexpired. This is exactly what we need." She looked up. "But if we use these without authorization, Garrett will have us all arrested for theft." "Then we get authorization," Mara said. "Who outranks Garrett?" "The hospital board. But they won't convene on short notice, Anne." "The police," Rachel interrupted. "If there's evidence of a crime, tampering with medical supplies, endangering a patient, they have to investigate. That gives us cover to use the medication, right?" The stairwell door burst open. Garrett emerged, red-faced and furious, with 2 security guards behind him. "Those women stole hospital property," he said, pointing at Mara. "I want them detained immediately." The security guards looked uncomfortable. This was clearly above their pay grade. Priya stepped forward, her voice ringing with authority. "Mr. Garrett, I have toxicology results proving that Jax Morrison is suffering from diethylene glycol poisoning. I have documentation showing that you removed the antidote from hospital inventory under false pretenses. And I have a recording of you admitting to obstruction and attempting to bribe a witness." She held up the vials. "I'm taking this medication to my patient right now. If you try to stop me, I'll have you arrested for attempted murder." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of the security guards, an older man with kind eyes, stepped back. "I'm not stopping a doctor from treating a patient," he said quietly. "Whatever political stuff is going on, that's above my head. But letting someone die when we got the cure right here? That ain't right." The second guard nodded slowly. "Yeah. I'm with Rodriguez on this." Garrett's face went purple. "You're both fired. And you," he jabbed a finger at Priya, "will never practice medicine again. I'll see to that personally." "Maybe," Priya said. "But at least my patient will be alive." She turned and ran for the ICU, Rachel and Mara close behind. Behind them, Garrett pulled out his phone, already making calls. Damage control. Lawyers. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Mara felt something other than desperation. She felt hope. They had the antidote. They had evidence. And they had the truth. Now they just had to save a man's life before Garrett found a way to stop them. The ICU erupted into controlled chaos the moment Priya burst through the doors with the vials. Dr. Webb looked up from a patient chart, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. "Dr. Nandan, what?" "Glycol poisoning." "Confirmed." Priya thrust her tablet at him, the toxicology results glowing on the screen. "Diethylene glycol at lethal concentrations. I have fomepizole. We need to start treatment immediately." Webb's eyes scanned the results, his face going pale. "How did you get this?" "I thought." "Does it matter?" Priya was already drawing up the medication, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "He's dying, Dr. Webb. We can save him. But only if we act now." For a moment, Webb stood frozen between protocol and conscience. Then he moved to Jax's bedside. "Get me sodium bicarbonate. And I want continuous cardiac monitoring. If his rhythm destabilizes again." "It won't," Priya said with more confidence than she felt. "The fomepizole will stop the glycol metabolism. The bicarbonate will correct the acidosis. This will work. Rachel stood at the window, her hands pressed against the glass, watching as they inserted the 4-line, as the clear liquid began flowing into her brother's veins. Mara stood beside her, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was, how long it had been since she'd slept, since she'd eaten, since she'd allowed herself to believe this might actually work. How long before we know? Rachel whispered. Hours, Mara said. Maybe less. If the medication works, his organ function should start improving. The acids in his blood will neutralize. His kidneys will start clearing the toxins. And if it doesn't work? Mara didn't answer. Because they both knew. Behind them, the elevator dinged. Garrett stepped out, flanked by 2 men in suits, lawyers, Mara guessed from their expensive shoes and predatory expressions. But before Garrett could speak, another figure emerged from the elevator. Detective Sarah Moss, Homicide Division, according to the badge on her belt. She was short, stocky, with gray-streaked hair pulled into a practical bun and eyes that missed nothing. Someone want to tell me what's going on here? Moss asked. I got a call about possible evidence tampering and patient endangerment. Garrett stepped forward smoothly. Detective, thank you for coming so quickly. There's been a serious breach of protocol. These individuals, he gestured at Mara and Rachel, have stolen hospital property and coerced a young doctor into administering unauthorized treatment. I want them charged with. Actually, Priya interrupted, stepping out of the ICU, I called the detective. Not Mr. Garrett, she held out her tablet. These are toxicology results showing that my patient is suffering from diethylene glycol poisoning from a contaminated cooling jacket. The antidote, fomepizole, was deliberately removed from hospital inventory and hidden in the basement. When Ms. Chen attempted to retrieve it to save a dying man, Mr. Garrett tried to prevent her. I have a recording. Moss's eyebrows rose. A recording. Mara pulled out her phone, playing back Garrett's voice. Give me the vials. Walk away. Forget any of this happened. I'll make sure you're compensated. The detective listened in silence. When the recording ended, she turned to Garrett. That true? You hid medication from a poisoning victim? That's taken completely out of context, Garrett said, but his voice had lost its certainty. The medication was removed due to inventory management issues. Standard procedure. Standard procedure to hide life-saving drugs in the basement? Moss pulled out a notepad. I'm going to need to see your inventory records. All of them. And I want that cooling jacket brought in for testing. The jacket is in medical evidence storage, Rachel said quickly. On Harborview Drive. It was transferred there unusually fast after my brother's accident. Mr. Garrett authorized it personally. Moss made a note. I'll send a team to secure it. In the meantime, Mr. Garrett, you're going to come with me and answer some questions. This is outrageous. I'm the administrator of this hospital. And if what I'm hearing is true, you're also guilty of tampering with medical evidence and endangering a patient's life. Moss's voice was flat, professional. We can do this easy or hard. Your choice. The lawyers flanking Garrett began whispering urgently in his ears. Finally, Garrett's shoulders sagged slightly. I'll cooperate fully. But I want it noted that I was acting in the hospital's best interests. Save it for your statement, Moss gestured to a uniformed officer who'd arrived with her. Make sure Mr. Garrett gets downtown safely. And someone get me that jacket. As they led Garrett away, Mara felt her knees go weak. Rachel caught her arm, steadying her. You did it, Rachel whispered. You actually did it. But Mara was looking at the ICU, at Jax's still form on the bed, at the monitors that would tell them whether this desperate gamble had worked. We haven't done anything yet. Not until he wakes up. Dr. Webb emerged from the ICU, pulling off his gloves. He looked at Mara with an expression she couldn't quite read, part respect, part embarrassment, part something else. His vitals are stabilizing, Webb said quietly. Blood pressure is coming up. Kidney function is showing early signs of improvement. It's working. Rachel's sob was half laugh, half cry. She turned and threw her arms around Mara, who stood stiff for a moment before returning the embrace. Priya appeared beside Dr. Webb, exhaustion and triumph written across her face. The tox panel doesn't lie. Ms. Chen was right from the beginning. If we'd listened to her yesterday. A lot of people owe her an apology, Webb finished. He extended his hand to Mara. Starting with me. You saved that man's life. And you did it despite every obstacle we put in your way. Mara took his hand, thinking about the hours of desperation, the dismissals, the contempt. I just couldn't stand by and watch him die. Most people would have, Webb said. Most people would have given up. Through the ICU window, Jax's monitors continued their steady beeping. Each beep a heartbeat. Each heartbeat a victory. But there was still one more battle to fight. 12 hours later, Jax Morrison opened his eyes. Mara wasn't there to see it. She'd finally gone home to hold her son, to sleep for 4 hours in her own bed, to let the adrenaline drain from her system. But Rachel called her at 6 p.m., her voice thick with tears and joy. He's awake. He's talking. Mara, he's going to live. Mara sat on her worn couch, Danny curled against her side watching cartoons, and let herself cry. Not the desperate tears of the past 2 days, but the exhausted relief of someone who'd carried an impossible weight and finally set it down. I'm so glad, she whispered. Come see him. Please. He wants to meet you. But before Mara could answer, her phone buzzed with another call. Detective Moss. Ms. Chen. We've got a situation at the evidence warehouse. I need you to come down here. Mara's relief curdled into dread. What kind of situation? The kind where evidence mysteriously goes missing. I think you'll want to see this. 20 minutes later, Mara pulled up to the Harborview facility with Rachel beside her. Detective Moss met them at the entrance, her expression grim. The jacket's gone, Moss said without preamble. According to the logs, it was checked out this morning by someone with administrative credentials. But the signature is forged, handwriting analysis confirms it. Garrett, Rachel breathed. Maybe someone working for him. Either way, we've got a missing piece of evidence in what's now a criminal investigation. Moss gestured for them to follow. But the attendant on duty, guy named Dennis Wheeler, says something interesting happened around 3 a.m. last night, before the jacket went missing. They entered the warehouse, that same poorly lit space Mara had seen before. Wheeler was a nervous man in his 50s, thin hair combed over a balding pate, fingers tapping anxiously on the counter. Tell them what you told me, Moss instructed. Wheeler swallowed. There was a woman. Around 2:30, maybe 3 a.m. She came asking about the Morrison evidence. Said she was from hospital administration, needed to verify chain of custody. What did she look like? Mara asked. 50s, professional. Expensive suit. She had the right credentials, the right paperwork. I didn't think anything of it, Wheeler's voice cracked. She went into the storage area for maybe 20 minutes. When she came back, she said everything was in order. But now the jacket's gone, and I'm going to lose my job, aren't I? Did she take anything else? Moss pressed. Any other evidence logged around the same time? Wheeler pulled up his computer, scrolling through entries. There were 3 other motorcycle accidents in the past month. She asked about those too. Wanted to see all the riding gear we had in storage. Mara felt ice crystallize in her veins. This wasn't just about Jax. This was about covering up a pattern. Moss was already on her phone. I need warrants. Now. For St. Harbor Medical Center's administrative records and personnel files. Yes, it's urgent. We've got evidence destruction in an attempted murder case. But Mara was thinking about something else. Something Wheeler had said. You mentioned she was here for 20 minutes. That's a long time just to verify chain of custody. Wheeler nodded. I thought so too. But she had the credentials. Can we see the storage area? Mara asked. Exactly where the Morrison evidence was kept? Moss nodded, and Wheeler led them through the maze of shelves to a section marked Medical Evidence. Current. There was an empty space where Jax's items should have been. But Mara wasn't looking at the empty space. She was looking at the shelf above it, at a box labeled with a different case number, dust disturbed recently. That's one of the other motorcycle accidents, Wheeler confirmed, checking his tablet. James Kowalski. Crashed 3 weeks ago. Survived with minor injuries. Can we see his gear? Mara asked. Wheeler hesitated, looking at Detective Moss. She nodded. Inside the box was a cooling jacket, different brand, different style, but unmistakably the same type. And when Mara examined it closely in the harsh fluorescent light, she saw what she was looking for, a small tear in the lining, gel residue dried dark around the edges. We need to test this, Mara said. Right now. Priya arrived 40 minutes later, summoned by Mara's urgent call. She brought a portable chemical testing kit from the hospital, the kind used for hazardous material identification. They worked quickly, Priya extracting a sample of the dried gel, applying the reagent. The test strip turned dark violet within seconds. Positive for diethylene glycol, Priya confirmed. Same toxic formula. Moss was already making calls. I want every motorcycle accident in the past 6 months cross-referenced with cooling jacket evidence. If there's a pattern, I want to know about it. Rachel stared at the jacket, horror dawning on her face. How many people? How many others like Jax? That's what we're going to find out, Moss said. Her phone rang. She answered, listened, and her expression hardened. They found something. In Garrett's office files. Purchase orders for cooling jackets, hundreds of them. Cheap, unregulated imports. He was buying them wholesale and, she paused, listening. Jesus Christ. What? Mara demanded. Moss looked up, and for the first time, Mara saw genuine anger in the detective's eyes. He was supplying them. Selling them through third parties at motorcycle rallies, online marketplaces. Marking them up 300%. When people started getting sick, he recognized the pattern, recognized what it would do to him if it came out. So he started covering it up. Hiding evidence. Making sure victims never got diagnosed. The warehouse fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. How many? Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. They're still counting, Moss said. But at least a dozen cases in 3 states. Maybe more. Mara thought about Jax dying in that hospital bed. Thought about all the others who'd died while doctors searched for answers that had been deliberately hidden. Thought about Administrator Garrett counting his profits while people suffered. We need to go public, she said. Every hospital, every ER needs to know what to look for. We need to. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson, Danny's struggling to breathe again. Taking him to ER. Meet us there. The world tilted. I have to go, Mara gasped, already running for her car. My son. Rachel caught her keys before she could drop them. I'll drive. You're in no condition. As they raced toward St. Harbor Medical Center, the same hospital where this had all started, Mara couldn't help thinking about the bitter irony. She'd saved one life. But what if she couldn't save the one that mattered most? The emergency room at St. Harbor Medical Center was too familiar now, the same fluorescent lights, the same antiseptic smell, the same sense of time moving too slowly and too fast all at once. But this time, Mara wasn't a visitor. This time, she was the terrified mother in the waiting room. Danny Chen, 7 years old, acute asthma exacerbation. A nurse called them back immediately. Mrs. Patterson had brought him in 10 minutes ago. He was already in a treatment room, an oxygen mask strapped to his small face, his eyes wide with fear. "Mama." His voice was muffled by the mask, his chest heaving with the effort to breathe. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." Mara took his hand, feeling how small it was, how fragile. The doctor, young, competent-looking, was already listening to his lungs with a stethoscope. Significant wheezing bilaterally. O2 sat is 89%. "We've started albuterol, but he's not responding well." The doctor looked at Mara. "Has this happened before?" "Yes, but never this bad. His inhaler usually." "When did the attack start getting worse?" Mara's mind was sluggish with exhaustion and fear. "I don't know. Maybe the past few weeks. I thought it was just the weather changing." The doctor frowned, checking Danny's chart. "Any environmental changes at home? New pets, construction, mold?" "No, nothing." Mara stopped. Something clicked in her tired brain. "Wait. I started bringing home extra shifts worth of leftovers from the diner. They've been sitting in containers in the fridge. Could that?" "Unlikely." The doctor paused. "Unless." "What kind of containers?" "Just the usual disposable ones from the restaurant." Behind them, someone cleared their throat. Priya stood in the doorway, still in her hospital badge from upstairs. She must have heard about Danny through the ER grapevine. "Dr. Chen," she said to the attending. "May I?" Dr. Chen, no relation, nodded. Priya moved to Danny's bedside, her expression thoughtful. "Mara, when did you start working double shifts at the diner?" "About 3 weeks ago. After my ex stopped sending support payments." Mara's voice was hollow. "I needed the money for Danny's medication." "And you've been exposed to commercial kitchen chemicals more frequently. Industrial cleaners, degreasers." Priya looked at Dr. Chen. "Check his reaction history. I'm betting we're looking at sensitization to volatile organic compounds, transferred via clothing, maybe residue on her skin. It's been building up gradually." Dr. Chen pulled up labs on the computer. "Eosinophil count is elevated. IgA levels are high. You might be right." Mara felt like the ground was tilting beneath her feet. "You're saying I made him sick? That working extra to pay for his medicine is what?" "No." Priya's voice was firm. "You're saying a broken system made him sick. You're saying that a mother having to work herself to exhaustion just to afford basic healthcare is what made him sick." An alarm blared from Danny's monitor. His oxygen saturation had dropped to 85%. "He's not responding to standard treatment," Dr. Chen said urgently. "I need to intubate." "Wait." Priya held up a hand. "Try magnesium sulfate first. For push. It'll relax the bronchial muscles. Give it 5 minutes before we go invasive." Dr. Chen hesitated, then nodded. "Get me 4 grams of mag sulfate. Now." The medication went in through Danny's 4. Mara held her son's hand, whispering reassurances she didn't believe. The second stretched into eternities. Then, slowly, Danny's breathing began to ease. The wheezing quieted. His oxygen saturation climbed, 87, 89, 91, 93. "That's it," Priya breathed. "Come on, Danny. Just breathe." By the time it hit 95%, Mara was crying. Danny pulled the oxygen mask aside. "Mama, why are you sad?" "I'm not sad, baby. I'm happy. So happy." Dr. Chen stepped back, relief evident on his face. "Crisis averted. But he needs to stay for observation. And we need to identify the environmental triggers, minimize his exposure. I'll quit the diner, Mara said immediately. I'll find something else. Something that. You'll do no such thing, the voice came from the doorway. Jax Morrison stood there, pale and shaky, one hand braced against the doorframe. Rachel was beside him, supporting his weight, her expression a mixture of exasperation and pride. You're supposed to be in bed, Priya said sharply. I was. Then I heard the woman who saved my life was down here with her sick kid. Jax moved into the room, his steps careful but determined. I needed to see her. Mr. Morrison, Mara started. Jax. Just Jax, he pulled up a chair and sat heavily, winded from the short walk. Rachel told me everything. How you figured out what was wrong when 50 doctors couldn't. How you fought to save my life even when they tried to stop you. He looked at Danny, then back at Mara. I want to help. You don't owe me anything. The hell I don't. I owe you my life. Jax leaned forward. Rachel also told me you used to run a motorcycle garage in Bakersfield. That you're good with mechanical work. Mara blinked, confused by the change in subject. That was years ago. Before my ex left. Before life got hard and you did what you had to do to survive. I get it. Jax's expression was serious. But here's the thing. My club, we're mechanics, fabricators, restoration specialists. We've been looking to expand, open a proper shop here in town. We need someone with real knowledge, someone we can trust. Someone who gives a damn about doing things right. I don't understand. I'm offering you a job. Better than that, I'm offering you a partnership. My club will put up the capital, you provide the expertise. We split profits 60-40, your favor. You work normal hours. Real benefits. Health insurance for you and Danny. The room fell silent except for the beeping of Danny's monitor. Why? Mara whispered. Because you saved my life. And because people like us, people who get overlooked, talked down to, dismissed, we take care of each other. Jax held out his hand. What do you say? Mara looked at her son, breathing easier now. At Rachel, smiling through tears. At Priya, who'd risked her career to do the right thing. At this biker who'd nearly died and was now offering her a future. She took Jax's hand. I say yes. 3 months later, the grand opening of Mara's Gear and Grit drew a crowd that spilled out of the small garage and into the parking lot. Motorcycles lined the street, Harleys, Triumphs, Ducatis, custom builds that gleamed in the afternoon sun. The air smelled of motor oil, fresh paint, and the burgers Sal had brought over from the diner as a congratulatory gesture. Mara stood in the doorway of her shop, Danny beside her wearing a tiny mechanic's jumpsuit that Jax's club had custom-made for him. She could hardly believe this was real, the clean workspace, the professional-grade equipment, the sign above the door with her name on it. Mama, when can I help fix motorcycles? Danny asked, tugging on her sleeve. When you're older, baby. For now, you can help organize tools. She ruffled his hair, grateful for how healthy he looked. The new health insurance had covered better asthma medication, air purifiers for their apartment, and regular checkups with a pulmonologist. He hadn't had a serious attack in 2 months. Jax approached, still moving carefully but growing stronger every day. The gray tint had left his skin, replaced by a healthy tan. He'd gained back most of the weight he'd lost during his ordeal. Ready for the ribbon cutting? He asked. As ready as I'll ever be. Rachel emerged from the crowd, carrying a bottle of champagne and a ridiculously oversized pair of scissors. Speech time, she announced with a grin. Mara's hands trembled as she took the scissors. Public speaking had never been her strength. But when she looked out at the faces in the crowd, Jax's biker club, neighbors from her apartment building, Mrs. Patterson, even Dr. Priya Nandan in street clothes, she found her voice. 3 months ago, I was a waitress working double shifts just to keep my head above water, she began. I never imagined I'd be standing here today. But then a stranger came into my life who needed help, and I remembered something important. Sometimes the right answer comes from the most unexpected places. Her eyes found Priya in the crowd. The young doctor had faced a disciplinary hearing over her actions that night, but the hospital board, newly cleansed of Garrett's influence, had ultimately cleared her. More than that, they'd promoted her to lead a new patient advocacy program. What happened at St. Harbor Medical Center changed a lot of lives, Mara continued. Not just Jax's. Not just mine. It exposed a criminal enterprise that had killed at least 17 people across 4 states. It led to nationwide safety inspections of aftermarket motorcycle gear. It reminded us all that every voice matters, whether you're wearing a white coat or an apron. The crowd applauded. Mara saw Detective Moss at the back, nodding approvingly. Garrett was in prison awaiting trial on multiple counts of negligent homicide, evidence tampering, and fraud. His network of counterfeit cooling jacket suppliers had been dismantled. The civil lawsuits would take years to sort out, but at least no one else would die from his greed. This shop, Mara said, her voice stronger now, isn't just about fixing motorcycles. It's about fixing what's broken in how we treat each other. It's about listening when someone says something's wrong, even if they don't have the right credentials. It's about second chances and new beginnings. She looked at Danny, who beamed up at her with pride that made her heart ache. So thank you. Thank you to Jax for believing in me. Thank you to Rachel for refusing to give up. Thank you to Dr. Nandan for risking everything to do what was right. Thank you to Tommy in Bakersfield, who taught me that knowledge is worth more than any title. She raised the scissors. And thank you to everyone who's ever been dismissed, overlooked, or told they didn't matter. This one's for us. She cut the ribbon, and the crowd erupted in cheers. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of handshakes, conversations, and the satisfying hum of motorcycles being wheeled in for inspection. Mara found herself in her element, hands deep in an engine, explaining carburetor adjustments to a young rider, feeling the familiar satisfaction of solving mechanical puzzles. As the sun began to set, the crowd thinned. Jax found Mara in the back workshop, cleaning her tools. You did good today, he said. We did good. This wouldn't exist without you. Nah. It wouldn't exist without you having the guts to speak up when everyone told you to shut up. Jax leaned against the workbench. I've been thinking about that night in the hospital when I was barely conscious. I remember saying something about my jacket. Dr. Webb mentioned that. He said you kept trying to tell him something. I was trying to say it was burning. That something was wrong. Jax shook his head. But I couldn't get the words out. And even if I had, I don't know if anyone would have listened. They were too busy running tests, consulting specialists. Sometimes the simplest answer is the one nobody wants to hear. Sometimes the simplest answer comes from a waitress who remembers something she learned in a garage 8 years ago, Mara said softly. Thank God for waitresses who pay attention, Jax smiled. Speaking of which, my club wants to do a monthly safety workshop here. Teach riders how to spot counterfeit gear, what warning signs to look for. Make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. I love that idea. Rachel appeared in the doorway. Hate to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you, Mara. Dr. Webb stood in the main garage, looking uncomfortable in civilian clothes. When he saw Mara, he straightened. Dr. Webb. This is a surprise. I wanted to apologize, he said without preamble. Properly. For dismissing you. For not listening when you tried to tell us what was wrong. For letting my ego get in the way of saving a patient. Mara studied him for a moment. She could see the genuine remorse in his eyes, the weight he'd been carrying. You were doing your job the way you were trained to do it, she said finally. The system failed, not just you. Maybe. But I should have been better. Webb held out his hand. For what it's worth, the hospital has implemented new protocols. We're training staff to consider non-traditional sources of information. To listen more and assume less. You changed how we practice medicine. Mara shook his hand. Then Jax didn't almost die for nothing. After Webb left, Mara walked outside where Danny was showing his miniature tools to another child. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of the ocean from a few miles away. The shop's lights glowed warm behind her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tommy in Bakersfield, saw the news coverage. Proud of you, kid. You did what I always knew you could. Mara smiled, typing back, learned from the best. She thought about the long road that had brought her here, the divorce, the financial struggles, the double shifts at the diner. The terrifying night when a stranger's sister had walked in and changed everything. The moment she'd chosen to speak up instead of staying silent. Life had been hard. It would probably be hard again. But standing here, watching her son laugh, knowing she'd saved a life and built something real from the wreckage, this was what mattered. This was what second chances looked like. Mama. Danny called. Can we get pizza to celebrate? Yeah, baby. We can get pizza. She locked up the shop, her shop, and walked toward her car with her son's hand in hers. Behind her, the sign glowed in the twilight, Mara's Gear and Grit, where every voice matters. Sometimes the miracle doesn't wear a white coat. Sometimes it wears an apron and sensible shoes and refuses to let anyone die on her watch. Sometimes the person who saves your life is the one nobody expected. And sometimes, that's exactly how it should be. The end.